Welcome to PM Express Business Edition. They play a critical role when it comes to supporting the Ghanaian economy. Well, I'm talking about the country's development partners. And one critical partner in this case is the World Bank. So now that Ghana has secured that IMF program, what would they be doing to support the economy to ensure that it put back on a strong footing? Well, he is Pierre Laporte, Country Director for Ghana, Sierra Leone, and Liberia. And welcome, sir, to PM Express Business Edition. And just to place that emphasis, that it's not just about Ghana, it's Sierra Leone and it's Liberia.
Thank you for having me. Nice to be here.
Interesting. So how do you combine all this portfolio? I mean, Ghana itself, we have our own challenges, and the other two other West African countries have.
Yeah. Well, it's, the way the bank is organized, we put countries in clusters either through commonality like Liberia, Sierra Leone, or sometimes language, like my current unit, which is Ghana, Liberia, Sierra Leone. No, look, it's interesting because, in various countries you have issues sometimes that are common, but there are also some specific aspects to countries like Liberia and Sierra Leone are more commonality than Ghana because, they are both post-conflict countries and quite similar structure of the economy, whereas Ghana is a bigger economy, more advanced, and challenges, some are different, some are similar. So, yeah.
How are you doing yourself? Some have said that this particular period has been a very, very interesting time, coming from the spring meetings and the issues that are happening. How are you managing the situation? I mean, this is your playfield, looking at where you've been and where you worked in the group and all the rest. And so how would you describe the current moment being a country director of the bank?
Well, first, when you are a director, it's part of the job to travel, to be very busy, especially for me, I'm here to serve the country, right? The World Bank is here to serve our clients, the people of the countries, and my job is whatever I have to do. If I have to travel here and there, if I have to be here, I'm here to serve, and I've been very happy to do so. Yes, it's been a bit more hectic because of the demands, especially in the last 12 months with the announcement of the IMF program, which we, as you know, IMF is a sister institution of the World Bank, and we complement one another. And there's been definitely a more intensified dialogue around the reforms. We had dialogue before, more on project lending, but now with the program and what we will be doing, we'll talk about it in a minute. So, yeah, look, it's been great. I always say, sometimes you learn when things are not always going right, and I learn every day. We all learn every day. I mean, there are things, experience I bring. Of course, I've been through this before in my own country, as I said before. But for us, it's an opportunity to help Ghana, and we hope that in 3, 4, 5 years down the line, we would look back and say that the World Bank played its role.
Talking about opportunity to help Ghana, I mean, we knew developments that led to this program being approved, and now it's been approved. For you at the bank itself, and you as and you've been following developments, what do you make of this approval? Finally, we have it.
Look, in the last interview we had, I remember you asked me whether, one, Ghana should go to the IMF, and I told you it's up to Ghana to decide, and you told me, would it be a good thing or not a good thing? And I remember I told you there would be some advantages if Ghana was to go into IMF program, and I did mention one example would be to allow Ghana to restructure the debt. So it's happened, and I think we all feel, despite all the controversies and politics and sometimes valid questions also, you've been there 17 times, why this time? These are all valid questions and the people have the right to ask, rightly so. But we always felt that where Ghana was, it was only really the only option for you to be able to, because you needed support, right? The country can wake up tomorrow and readjust and do the right reforms. But sometimes, like in the case of the debt restructuring, I mean, you could have done the domestic debt on your own with the banks, but you could never have done the kind of external bilateral restructuring without an IMF program. And also it brings you resources. As we know, IMF will give you $3 billion over this program, and it's important because of the depletion of the reserves. It will help you cushion rebuild your reserves. It will bring, obviously, accompany you in the reforms. I mean, people talk of the IMF program. Actually, it's a Ghana program supported by the IMF. So they'll tell you that themselves. So
you talked about, you made a very critical point about the advantages the last time we spoke about going to a program. Does this suggest that there are some disadvantages going to a fund program? Is it in terms of the shocks, the fiscal reforms, and whether the economy is really ready for that?
Look, if you ask me personally, I see very few, if any, disadvantage in the context. I mean, yes, one can say that I've heard this many times, you're imposing this, your conditionalities. But actually, these are reforms, actually, actions that are needed for the country, and the country do it. IMF doesn't come here. I'm not IMF, we will speak to the res rep, but IMF or World Bank doesn't come here and press your neck down on the table and tell you have to do this. We tell you in the current context, this is what we think are appropriate to address your weaknesses and your issues that you're facing, and here is what we can offer. And of course, we have to agree with you. If you tell us, no, we want to do that, and we feel that will not bring you back to sustainability, we will not. We tell you either we get some at a middle ground, or we tell you, so we cannot do it.
Do you think that the country ownership is the best approach going for, and even for the World Bank projects as well, and initiatives and all the rest, that allowing the countries themselves to come out with proposals and solutions and ownership is the best thing to do going forward? Because it appears that in the past we've had some revolts, and not to just look at just the IMF program, but even World Bank initiatives and all the rest, where civil society groups, organized labor and all the rest. So if the country itself comes up with a proposal that it's a pure report, this is how we think we have to implement this World Bank initiative, do you think that is the way to go?
That's the only way, and that's the way we want. We all know that, institutions evolve. 50 years ago, 60 years ago, it was different. We all heard about the structural adjustment programs. We've learned lessons about it, and today, we've taken both institutions. Today, I talked about citizen engagement. We do not do any project without engaging the citizens. I will not approve any project at my level without the team satisfying me that the citizen engagement aspect have been adequately reflected. It's a corporate commitment, and I know the IMF has a similar approach. My vice president will not approve a project I sent to him if when he reads, he feels, or his advisors will tell him, we've not done enough to consult on this project, citizen, government, And look, there are always things we can do more. I mean, I know, for instance, myself, when I look back, I could have done more with civil societies, but with COVID, it was not always difficult to do that. But if you ask me, the ownership is the only way forward. We are not here to.
And where does this ownership lead? That when this engagement are done, are their inputs really taken on board and implemented to the letter?
Yes, because sometimes there are things that it's owned by you, and you put to us, and we will tell you, on this one, we do not agree, and we will not, it cannot support. If something is based on our experience, our knowledge of the past of other countries, that kind of action that proposed by an authority is not in line with best practice, we will not support things that we know is not right, and we will not support proposals that we think will take the country on a wrong footing.
Let's come to the fund program, and one would ask that, I know you're a sister institution, I know that you also played a critical role in the IMF itself approving Ghana's program in terms of what they will call financing assurance and support and all the rest. I also know that there are several projects that the funders or the World Bank is supporting, but let's start first. What role is the World Bank going to play in Ghana's IMF program?
Okay, like you said, we are assistant institutions that complement one another. They are the lead on all the macro issues, the fiscal issues, but we also have a macro trade and investment global practice that support their work. We do certain things together, like the debt sustainability analysis that underpins the program and underpins all that was needed to complete the debt restructuring. This is a joint initiative between World Bank and IMF. We approve it together. It won't go to one board or the other if this is not approved. But also, There are areas where it's our bread and butter, like sector work, like in energy. We know the energy is a huge issue for the fiscal framework, and we've been working intensely with the energy. We have the data. We are the ones leading policy dialogue, and IMF relies on us for that. But we rely on them for certain specific things, especially on the macro framework where we work with them. And there are other areas like now, the IMF now is really more pro-poor, and as you know, IMF always cares now. They understand that if they come with some fiscal consolidation, there is impact on the poor. And we come in, for instance, with our social protection project, and they factor all of this in, and even though IMF doesn't come in with the money for social protection, they, in their dialogue with government, will make sure that government puts aside adequate financing to protect the poor. So we do complement each other in that way. And yes, I mean, we played a role together. It's been and then I want to put on record my appreciation to the IMF colleagues, and we really work together as a great team, and I'm glad that.
I'll be coming more to the technical bit as well in terms of the support, but there is a financing aspect as well. I understand that the bank is going to support us with, I think, about $1 billion over 3 years and all the rest. That is one. There is also some support about some project financing as well. Help me with some clarity in that area about that $1 billion that is coming in, and then also the project support funding as well.
Yes, up to now we've only been doing project support, which is in line with what our country partnership framework. But with the reform in place, we've readjusted our pipeline, our list of projects coming, to factor in this budget support. It will be a 3-year program for $300 million each, totaling $900 million over 3 years. And we expect, because the fund program will overlap the year after, we will put another 250. So we will put over the 4 years about 1.1 billion. I'll come back to that. Then, because of the effects of the fiscal consolidation, we've also brought in early on additional financing for social protection of 150 million, which is going to the board this month. So this will come early. Our budget support will come in the second half of the year. But we've also brought in a financial sector support project, as you know, with the domestic restructuring of debt, domestic debt. These have impacted the banks. The capital adequacy have been hit, and as we speak, most banks, if not all, are probably below the capital adequacy requirement. And we are bringing in $250 million in emergency financial support project to help central bank and government cushion the impact on the banks of liquidity, and we're focusing mostly on solvency issues. But I want to make an important point. We will continue to deliver our regular projects. For instance, now in this month, we will bring an agriculture diversification project to the board for $200 million. We will also bring additional financing of 150 for Great Accra Resilience Project. So we will continue to do our regular work.
Let me try and focus on the budget support as a program thing, and that about $900 million. Is that also before the board? When are we hoping that we could be getting the first tranche? Will that be dependent on, just like the IMF program, meeting some conditions or prior actions to ensure that those disbursements come in? Can you update us on that one, please?
Absolutely. Our plan, our hope, is we can bring this to the board by September. But it will all depend how fast we reach agreement with government on the prior actions. It may be September, it may slip in October, but we're hoping. We need to do it this year because IMF has factored into its financing gap. When IMF goes to the board, if there's a gap, they cannot go. So they factored in $300 million from the World Bank. But this $300 million, I want to be very clear, it's not acquired, it's not given, it's not taken that World Bank will come and give. We need to have a strong reform package from government that accompanies as prior actions for us to deliver this $300 million. And these have to be in areas where us and government agree. These areas that have caused problems for the budget or for the sectors. For instance, I cannot go in all the details because we are still talking, but where we feel we want to intervene in 4 pillars. One is the whole aspect of domestic revenue mobilization, which IMF also has some aspects because, as we all know, Ghana's revenue GDP ratio is quite low, and we're hoping to accompany IMF reforms, government reforms to raise revenues. and there's a whole aspect around fiscal management, PFM, expenditure management. So we look at all these aspects. A second aspect is private sector development and financial sector. To accompany our financial sector project, we will also push for some reforms in the financial sector, because it's one thing to put money to address the problems now, but there are some long-term issues that still remain outstanding, and it will be important for Ghana to resolve, and we will support these reforms in that project. As I said before, when you have a kind of a very severe consolidation as you're having now, it's important to consider the growth agenda also. Because one thing is to squeeze the budget for you to realign and be able to pay your debt in the future. Protect the poor, which we're doing through the social protection project. But also, how do you keep the economy going? You need to maintain your growth agenda. You need to maintain economic growth, because the faster you grow, the faster the economy will recover, your ratios of revenue will improve, your ability to pay your debt will improve, and the economy will recover faster. And we need to relook at, we want to discuss with government certain reforms in the investment climate, because what brings you FDI is a good, sound investment climate. And today, there are areas where Ghana needs to do more. But the other two, very quickly, is energy. As I've said before, we all know energy is a huge burden on the fiscal framework. Government is subsidizing the energy sector over $1 billion a year. And something needs to be done urgently. And I must say that, unfortunately, reforms in that sector have been slow. And we're hoping with the program it will accelerate. And finally, the whole issue of building resilience. We have a pillar that will address, bring support to build socio-economic resilience, improve your social protection framework, because the World Bank may not always be giving money. Government, the budget has to be able to bring its own funding, the structures, the policies have to be there. And finally, climate resilience. We're looking at some areas where we'll support policies and other kind of issues around climate, because today, as you know, climate is a huge challenge for development, and it's important we consider that as part of the package.
So the economists will say all other things being equal, being able to meet all these conditions, you go to the board in September and that money should be approved for us, I must say.
Yeah, if we can agree with government before the end of this month, we can agree with our management before the end of this month, then we can hopefully take that in September. Yeah.
And does it work the same as, and sorry for...
Yeah, once it's approved within a week, you can
get the first 300 million. This is the budget support, and you've explained to me.
Yeah.
What about the project financing as well? What is the status of that one as well?
Okay, the social protection program is going to the board. It's already submitted. It's just a matter of going through. Of course, we're hoping the board members will approve, and I think they will in the circumstances. The financial sector support project, we're making progress. We have received the first draft of a government strategy to tackle all these issues around the financial sector. How are they going to intervene? What kind of governance framework there will be? How will the fund operate, the Financial Stability Fund? What will be the cost? How will you treat banks as domestic banks, foreign-owned banks? So all these things need to be resolved and agreed with us. And once this is in place, I think we can go forward. But it's on the principle we're ready to support, but we need government to finalize that plan urgently.
On the Financial Stability Fund, I mean, from the ministry's proposal or the discussions, they were hoping that all other things being equal, they could take off from July this year. But that would also be critical, that the bank's support come in time. I don't, and since these are still under discussion, I mean, are we hoping that these support will come in time? If government, you are satisfied with the proposals on the table?
That's our hope. But let's be fair. I mean, the faster it comes, the better. We cannot go to our board if this thing is not clear, because we need to know where we're putting our money, and if we're putting our money in the right place and in the right way. But to be fair also, this is a challenging issue. The first time Ghana goes through this, very few, if not any country, has done exactly the kind of domestic debt restructuring Ghana has done. I know there's Jamaica, there's others who've done it, but there's been differences. So it's not a straightforward issue, but really our hope is that central bank government can finalize that plan as early as possible.
And the project financing bit as well, how much are we looking at, if spread over a certain year or something in terms of the total funding, specifically for the project financing under the World Bank support?
This year, project financing will be 550.
Yeah. For this year?
Plus 800 million. It's a little bit more than that. Around 1 billion. Let's say ballpark figure.
Well.
Yeah.
How is the bank ensuring that the mechanisms that you have in place to ensure that if the World Bank is giving country George Wiafe 1.5 billion for X project, they are used judiciously for these targeted projects? What mechanisms are in place to ensure that all these financing that are coming, they are used exactly for what government put in that document that was submitted to your board?
Yeah, let me distinguish between budget support, which is cash that goes directly in the budget, but to support those areas that I've mentioned before, right? The reforms, reforms that cost money because you have to put in place system structures. Like if you're in PFM, you're doing, put in the digital system, do consulting work, etc. There's a lot of money going in there. This goes to, but before everything is paid, government has to show us proof that all the reforms have been implemented. That's how we put it. And then because of that, then government has the resources to implement its programs. Then we have investment projects. Investment projects are basically, generally, mostly, not always, but hard projects like building schools, building roads, water installations, and this kind of thing. So, but the way this operates is we first agree on the project objectives, the activities with government. Then we have a procurement plan before the project is approved that is agreed with government. Then we do not give project money, unlike budget support, we do not give project money in the budget. We create a project unit with its own designated account, with its own structures of procurement and safeguards, etc., that these projects are implemented with the line ministries in question, but through the PIU. The project implementation doesn't go to government. Of course, finance will finally clear the payments once, say, a tender for the road is done. The procurement will come to, the procurement people in the project will do their work, do the tender, etc., etc. But even then, things are cleared beforehand with us if they are major projects. Then it comes to us, they can tell us, we have this bid, there are 5 companies, this is the one that is the lowest, this is the one that is better technical thing. Then our teams, our experts will look at it and we can say, yes, we agree with your proposal to award to company X, or we do not agree because we feel there's been certain failures in the procurement process. Either go back and fix it, or we call it a procurement and we start over again. So this is project. So project money is really preserved within the projects as per procurement rules and implemented, and our teams now follow up implementation, and we have regular interim reports on implementation. I get a report every 6 months for normal projects. Every 3 months, if there's a problem projects, teams will come and say, okay, last 3 months it was this, now we've done this assessment, this is where we are. And I can tell the team, I don't agree with your assessment, you are being too soft here, go back and downgrade that project, something like that. So this is investment project. So we do have safeguards, at least for us, to ensure that any procurement is cleared by us for large procurements, if it's not emergency. There's like what we call prior review, where we have to do it before the money is paid out. We have to see it and approve the tender. Or post-review, whereby say it's small activities or emergency activities, or say government do it, but then we'll have to review it later. And if we feel that you gave the project to the wrong person, you will be eligible to pay back the bank. So, and then thirdly, there's a more recent kind of support. We call that performance for results program before us. It's more like it's between it's hybrid between a budget support, or you give the money once something is done, and projects, because this is based on results. We sort of support reforms. It's mostly reforms. We sort of buy out government reforms. I'd say in the health sector, like now, or in the governance sphere, we have a project with different activities to improve, either your systems, or to improve certain investment, or to equip hospitals with equipment. Once we see that you've done this, we will disperse.
Is the bank worried sometimes the complaints that come that your support is so stringent that sometimes we end up not even getting the support coming because your rules of engagement are so stringent?
It is a challenge. I must be very fair that actually it's both sides. And one of my roles as country director is to go around and help unblock things where it's not moving, you know. Like now we are approaching another fiscal year. I'm pushing the teams to please let's make sure we disburse. But then some people will tell me, Pierre, there's so many problems in this ministry, blah, blah, blah. And sometimes when I go and talk to the minister, we find that problems actually sometimes on our side, you know, because of the procurement rules, you know, are stringent, sometimes cumbersome and long. And we do understand, and when sometimes countries, clients call, you know, tell guys, it just takes too long. And sometimes they are right. And our role is to try to see how we can be more flexible. And in this context, there's actually an initiative inside the World Bank now. It's called the Evolution Roadmap, where the World Bank is taking a look at ourselves, at how we operate now, and in the next few months and next year or so, we will come out with a new approach. Not necessarily new, but we will see what is not working, how we can do better, and procurement will surely be one of the things that we will be taking in mind.
Mr. Pierre Laporte is the country director for the World Bank, Ghana, Sierra Leone, and Liberia. We're looking at Ghana's IMF program, and what role is this bank playing in supporting to stabilize the economy? What are some of the challenges that they have identified and ensure that they can put their country back on that road to recovery? Take a short break, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to PM Express Business Edition as we look at the country's or Ghana's program with the IMF and the role that the World Bank is playing to help with the recovery of Ghana's economy. Mr. Pierre Laporte is country director for Ghana, Sierra Leone, and Liberia. Mr. Pierre Laporte, in your earlier submission, you spoke about the debt sustainability analysis that you've done, and which puts us in a very interesting category. As the bank, are you worried about where we've gotten to? And for some who've argued that never again?
I wouldn't say worried because you're already there.
Yeah.
I mean, it's unfortunate. I mean, really, what is important is that you are now in a position and you have the kind of framework and support in place to get you back towards sustainability. That's why the IMF program underpins a sustainable macro framework and the sustainability going forward. IMF would not go to its board if it felt, you know, that the policies were not sufficient to restore macro stability and to bring the debt to a more sustainable path. So, in that regard, you're in a good place because you are not there. You're starting, but you are on the trajectory to get there, and that should be comforting to Ghanaians.
Are you satisfied with the? I know when you look at the IMF report, there's a bit where government has also put across their own program and what they are doing to stabilize the economy. Are you satisfied with the proposals put forward in terms of the required fiscal reforms to try and stabilize the economy?
Look, it's IMF program.
Okay.
I cannot say I'm satisfied or not, but what I can tell you, when I read the program document, and as a former IMF staff, as an economist, when I look at the policies in there, I agree with the assessment that the policies, if implemented, are adequate to bring the country to a better place, to sustainability. So in that regard, I am in agreement by reading and what I see, what I look at, that it's the right program.
Mr. Laporte, what would you tell those who would argue that, I mean, our debt has reached levels that are unsustainable? Some will blame our development partners, like the World Bank itself, that why has the bank sat quiet for us to get to this level, and therefore our current predicament, the World Bank cannot excuse itself?
Okay, before I get there, I want to make another point on the previous question. Yes, the IMF program has the adequate policies, reforms to bring you to fiscal and that sustainability. But in my view, it's not sufficient. And it's not IMF's fault. Because unless the country implements structural reforms, the IMF program will be compromised. And you will not get there. I give the example of energy before. Today, the energy sector is costing the budget over $1 billion a year, and this will keep increasing if not just the tariff adjustment in the IMF program is there, but there are other things that need to be done. Collection is poor, it needs to be improved. Technical losses are high, they need to be brought down. Other aspects of the energy sector need to be tackled, all these contracts that are not sustainable. I know government is doing it. I know that there's the energy sector recovery plan, a revised one will go to cabinet soon. This is one. The investment climate has to be improved so that investors can inject more money, because the macro is one element, but you need the growth to support that. And I just want to make that point before. Look, to go back to your point, whether you blame the development partners, I really do not think so.
Or blame the World Bank. Let me be
Absolutely
more
not.
specific.
Absolutely not. I'll tell you why. Because our projects that we bring are very long-term concessional lending, okay? And for instance, Ghana, as a low-middle income country, borrows at terms that are mostly, actually they are concessional, okay, over 35% grant element, long-term 35, 40 years. We have a few windows now that are less concessional, but this is at the discretion of governments. But in the overall scheme of things, we don't do lending that gets country in trouble. What gets countries in trouble is when sometimes short-term lending, like high domestic lending that happen in Ghana, or some of the bonds sometimes are not so cheap. And I must say there, yes, there was a World Bank guarantee.
And that's what you guaranteed government to go out and borrow.
We did in that time. No, this did not put you where we are. This is one of a small drop of water in the big bucket, right? So yes, with hindsight, when we look at it, we feel that maybe it's not something that we should have done in the way we did. But at the time, it was the only way to allow. Without that, Ghana could not access resources. But it's a lesson that we've learned. It's first to say that Ghana, World Bank, will honor its commitment and pay off the guarantee, which we've already done.
You've done already?
We've paid already.
For the Eurobonds?
Yeah, we've settled. As the coupons will come, we will pay. We've already, in writing, the board has approved for us to fully pay the.
How much is that?
It's $400 million guarantee out of a $1 billion bond. And then Ghana will have to pay back over time, and we've offered some terms that we feel are reasonable for both sides for Ghana to repay. Then, other than that, I cannot say that World Bank borrowing has got Ghana anywhere.
I'm asking about this Eurobond issue and all the rest. Going forward, do you think that the approach will change as in where you exercise your guarantee? Because in doing this, you also want to check the country in trying to control its debts, because we have gotten to this stage because some have said that we had borrowed too much and we've not taken those steps that will repay back some of these debts.
Yeah, I think you need to separate the two things. On the guarantee, as a one-off, out of your $7 billion debt, we guaranteed a fairly small amount. So, as I said, we recognize our shortcomings and we've learned lessons, and it's got us internally to rethink the guarantee as an instrument and how and in what context we do it, because guarantees remain an important instrument. I mean, there are also partial risk guarantee that the IFC works a lot with, and private sector. We cannot just because Ghana fell into some issues with that we just will do away. It's one of the instruments in the World Bank portfolio, and we will learn lessons and look at how we better bring this kind of help to countries. But in the broader scheme of things, it's the country's debt management strategy that has to be right. I mean, and in the context of the reform, this is also one thing that has been agreed with the IMF to relook at the whole debt strategy, and going forward, Ghana also has to learn lessons and how to avoid pitfalls.
I mean, this is about the third time I'm talking to you now. You've raised issues about the energy sector. What is government not doing right, and what should we be doing right as a country to deal with this issue one heads? Because it appears that it keeps coming up, the debt issues, the IPP, the power purchase program, bringing in enough power. How do we get around this challenge? At least
according to experts, I'm not an energy expert, but I tell you what my experts and government, we agree it's in the energy reform sector plan. The first one is your tariff structure. Basically, the reason why you've seen tariff increases is because Ghana is selling energy to the public and to companies lower than production costs. Normally, in a balanced equilibrium mode, or in modern economies, tariffs reflect the cost. Like anything, if you build a house, you buy material for $1 million, you cannot sell the house for for half a billion dollars. You lose money. So as an energy producer, you should be able to recover your costs, because if you don't recover your costs, who will do it for you? It's government. So that's one of the things. Tariff have to be adjusted, and there is a lot of work being done, not just a tariff structure. Yeah. Tariff adjustment is one thing, but your whole tariff system, tariff structure have to be done, and this is being worked on, and I think there's progress there. Where there's a lack of progress is in collection. You produce electricity, you sell, and then you don't collect the money. Where's the money going? Either people are stealing electricity, or some companies are not paying, and is ECG doing enough to collect? Probably not, as we see. And they recognize that. They are implementing reforms. Hopefully, we will support to improve collection. Sometimes, it's not only in Ghana, governments don't pay their bills. Yeah. But here, I think, again, as part of this whole things, there's debt from long time. Some governments, some ministries don't pay. And government has to get tough. You get your budget, you pay your bills. Otherwise, there are consequences. So collection is another thing. And technical losses. Technical losses is when you produce, you distribute electricity, and because either the cables are old, the infrastructure is old, then it gets lost somewhere there. And this requires investment. So these two, three things are important. But another one, in the case of Ghana, is those contracts that you've signed, those PPAs, are just too expensive. Too expensive, and the kind of PPAs you sign is take-or-pay, which means Ghana is paying to the electricity that is not even being produced. Yeah. You have double capacity. Yes, over time, usage will improve, so your excess capacity will go down. But the fact is, in the last few years, Ghana entered into some PPAs that were the wrong types, in our view, and at the wrong rates, at the wrong prices, and today you are paying dearly for it. And also it has an impact because today we're talking of clean energy. Yeah. Many companies want to come to Ghana to do solar and all. Yeah, government wants probably the best thing to do, but you are still caught up with those that you have to pay because you are tied up in these contracts. So you will take new ones, you will pay them, you have to pay the other ones. So there's really an urgent need to restructure these contracts. I know that government has entered into negotiations with some of them. I think there's a long way to go. There's Ari's government owes these companies also, which complicates the discussions. I don't want to go into too much details, but these are the kind of problems that you face. In
terms of technical support, has the bank been silent in that area? Because this was not a one-off thing, and it appears is reoccurring.
Since 2019, we've put on the table a performance for results program, as I mentioned earlier. We've had $300 million on the table waiting for government to implement these reforms for us to support it. It has not happened for various reasons, and our offer is still on the table. So if we can get through this, say, after the DPO, we still want to help the energy sector. Not that we want to, we need to. Yeah. Because it will continue to be a burden on the budget if we don't do it. And we as a partner, it's an area of expertise, and we feel the importance not just to help stabilize the macro economy, but also the sector itself. You need a modern energy sector. Today, West Africa is in a good position in terms of the energy trade. We have the West Africa Power Pool, which connects all these countries, and Ghana now is coming back into the Power Pool. We will support actually next year. I believe it's a $150 million regional project to help Ghana collect to Burkina Faso, I believe. Yeah. These are the kind of things that are needed. But for you to trade energy, you need to get all the institutional governance issues right, and these reforms will help do that.
For me, I think it's interesting that there's $300 million on the table, both technical support and financial assistance, and the country Ghana is not interested. It's interesting for me.
Well, it's a question that
why?
No, I think
is the performance criteria too stringent? Prior action too stringent?
No.
We want to do our own negotiations. We don't need the World Bank in this space.
Well, you don't need the World Bank, but you need the money because you can afford it.
But it's a good area to make some good money.
That's what we, I mean, look, if you ask me later, you know, I don't know, maybe you'll talk to me because I'm leaving soon, but there's been missed opportunities, and this is an example, you know. But there just needs to be agreement internally in government, in the Ministry of Energy, what needs to do, and sometimes I don't want to go too deep into that because this is intimate to government, and I don't want to.
Mr. Laporte, I again back to the question about those who would still want to hold the World Bank as a group's neck, that you can do more. And I always cite this example, and I extend to be educated, that when the government is in office, you have very good reports from the bank and not you about how things have been done and all the rest. When the government leaves office, the next report from the bank as an institution, you see them punching a lot of loopholes in the area of governance, finance, program implementation, and some are saying that those criticisms are coming too late. If you really wanted to put that government on its toes, it should have come whilst they were in office.
Look, we talk to government all the time, and we tell them all the time, not behind the scenes, because when you ask me, I talk about it, but I don't believe also it's responsible for an institution to dirty laundry in the public. If people ask me about things, I will talk about it. What are the issues, the challenges? I'll tell you. I just give the example of the energy sector. I've been upfront with you that government has been slow to reform. Money was on the table, opportunities were not taken. But at the same time, I think it's important to maintain integrity of the dialogue, because you cannot go and say to the public. I met Mr. of Finance today. I totally don't agree with him. We talk about it. We disagree on things, and when there are cases like that, we talk about it in our reports. We publish our reports on other projects, and we talk about objectives not being met. If you look at go on the World Bank website, maybe where I could do better is to educate people where to go to find the kind of information that you're saying, because every project we take action when things are not moving. We downgrade projects. We write there are publicly posted interim reports all the time. Completion reports are posted, and we say this project did not meet its objective. Why? Because either at entry point we got it wrong, or during implementation this were weak, or that was not done. So it's I think to say that we don't say where things are wrong, I would not agree. Maybe we could do more. I agree.
Better. The government in its program is talking about working with the World Bank to reform some of its social intervention programs as well. Free SHS is one of them, planting for food and jobs. What role is the bank playing in this so-called reforms? Would that lead to downgrading support, restructuring the program, or cancellation of the program as a recommendation?
The major role we play, we provide funding, like social protection, for instance. It's one thing to give money, but you have to make sure that the money is spent correctly. For instance, I'll give an example. We've been talking very, very directly with both the Finance Ministry now and the Ministry of Local Government on the school feeding program. Because school feeding program, we know it can get very political. There can be favors and stuff like that. And we've been very clear. In the new project, we expect full transparency and accountability in the way school feeding programs are given out. So, and we are clear. If tomorrow, because what we do, not because we want to do it, we want to do things the right way, in line with good practice everywhere else, and we don't want our projects to become political tools. So we are clear. If what is agreed, or what is agreed because we agree, we're going forward. If government refuses to do school feeding in the right way, we will restructure the project and do not support that activity. I'll just give you an example. You mentioned
free SHS.
Free HSS. It's important because countries like Ghana, developing countries, government needs to support. But what we need to do is at the same time work in parallel to review your policies, to review your frameworks. How can we improve access to private sector in the health sector? And there is, I mean, IFC in some parts of Africa have invested, So where we come in, we look at your policies, we look at your governance structures, your frameworks, and we tell you this is good, this is not good. We propose changes to you. But if government doesn't want to accept it, We cannot force. Okay, sometimes either we put the money somewhere else, or we restructure projects and put it in areas where we feel it can better reach the beneficiaries.
Yeah. And so with respect to this engagement that is going on, you have made some proposal. You talked about the new the school feeding thing.
Yeah.
It means that there have been some proposals put forward on what government should do about these social intervention programs.
Yeah.
If government fails to deliver on those actions, the funding will be cut.
Yes, we'll put elsewhere. We don't take funding and go back to Washington with it. What we do is we might, it's happened very rarely, but it's happened where we take the money and put it somewhere else, because your allocation, your basic IDA allocation, is for the country. And whilst we can, at the end of the cycle, if it's not used, we have to put it back in the pool and distribute to countries. But during the cycle, what we try to do, we put money in. I can give you, when I came here a few months later, there was a land project that had been approved by the board, but then it was taking a long time. There was some disagreement between different parts of government. So in the end, we know what, we say, okay, I pull this back, we put the money into another project. So it happens, but it happens rarely.
When you look at some of these social intervention programs, like the free SHS, school feeding program, planting for food and jobs, is the problem, some would say that the idea is good, right? The problem has to do with the implementation and getting the funding right, pushing the money to the right spot, and accountability, right?
Absolutely. It's the governance. How do you do it? You know, the structures that are there. It's the accountability, the fairness, do it the right way, do it the appropriate way. And if it's, because you can have good intentions, but if along the path somewhere there are other things that come in and distorts the whole process, then your intentions will not benefit the poor, the beneficiaries, because the chain is broken by either, like you say, poor governance, poor delivery, corruption, or whatever kind of things.
This is PM Express Business Edition, and we're looking at Ghana's IMF program and the role of the World Bank. As we try and wrap up on this discussion, we'll take a break. When we're back, we'll talk about poverty reduction and the World Bank. And also, Mr. Pierre Laporte, this might be ending his tenure in August. I stand to be, certain bird whispered to me, I'll be finding out whether it's true, and how do you look forward to your reign or your service in Ghana? How has it been and all the rest? And also, governance and corruption. We'll be right back after this break. Welcome back to PM Express as you look at the IMF program and the World Bank. And Pierre Laporte is the country director for the World Bank, Ghana, Sierra Leone, and Liberia. Mr. Laporte, poverty reduction. Are we getting it right? Let's look at even Ghana.
Yeah, it remains a huge challenge, and I think in recent years we've probably seen a bit of a turnaround, partly because of COVID, partly because of the crisis in Ukraine, whereby energy, food prices across the world have gone up. But I guess in Ghana, the broader economic crisis have definitely impacted the poor in a way that we've not seen for some time. So. Yeah, it is a problem.
Is it because program implementation, program concept, or we are not touching the right spot to ensure that years after World Bank projects and initiatives on Ghana, there have been significant progress when it comes to reducing poverty in those critical regions in Ghana?
Yes, I think it's a combination of several things. First, if you look at the growth numbers now, growth have declined. How do you remove people out of poverty? The economy has to grow. You have to have more money for social programs in the budget, and that's when you can collect more revenues, because the economy is growing, you can put more money to social programs. Private sector is more buoyant and creates more jobs, and not just that people have jobs and income, but the quality of the jobs and the quality of the income is better. But in Ghana, like elsewhere, because of like I said before, the exogenous crisis created outside, but also because the domestic economy has been in crisis. And this has also contributed to that. But then, on top of that, it's all the things you talked about, the whole aspect of service delivery. Okay? When there's not efficiency is affected, when things are not as efficient as it should be, funds do not reach either as fast or where it should be. I mean, we know, for instance, some of the things that IMF and ourselves we're talking to government is the funds that should be going to the various communities. They are not getting there as much as they should, partly because of the squeeze on the budget, where governments have been required to cut certain things, as I told you before the restructuring now. Ghana's revenue, 80% is going to interest payments and salaries, so this leaves very little for other types of programs. But also the efficiency and the governance aspects which we talked about earlier, like if government is doing a program, but is not doing it in the most transparent way, if the criteria are not clear and right, then you have situations where the poor do not benefit the way they should. So these are all things that government should look at, and that's why, for instance, we brought a fairly big governance project, and I was a bit disappointed that it got stuck at the National Assembly for so long, because we all talk about governance in Ghana. We have about $200 million, not just to improve public finance management, increase revenues in finance, do the collection better, do e-procurement to avoid fraud and all, but also look at the service delivery side, how to help the line ministries improve the efficiency of the delivery. You know, when we buy books or we buy health products, materials, how quick and how efficient does it get to the clinics, to the school? Because if this whole thing is not efficient, that's also a governance aspect that sometimes we don't focus enough on. We focus on corruption, which is a problem, yes, but governance is a broader concept, and unfortunately, right now there's a lot of work to be done in all our countries, not just Ghana.
And talk about governance, corruption. For you, do you think that there's still a lot more work to be done, or we are making progress? Or listen, it's very disappointing.
I think there's work to be done. There's work to be done. There's clearly scope for Ghana to tackle, corruption. And but as I've said before, the World Bank, we are here to support. That's why in the Africa Western Central strategy that was done like 3 years ago, the first element is rebuilding social contract. The trust between citizens and the leadership, not just government, but the broader leadership. And fortunately in Ghana today, this is still, I wouldn't say it's intact, but it's in good health. But if you look at Guinea, at Mali, all these countries, Burkina, why are there so much coup d'etat? Because people feel that the government has not delivered, the state has failed them. And sometimes people manifest in coup d'etat. And I'm happy and proud when I look at Ghana that you have the maturity to deal with these problems, in a different way, through dialogue, through getting around the table and addressing issues through elections, etc. So, going back to your point, yeah, there's more to be done. And us at the World Bank, what we can do, we can bring resources to help improve systems. We can bring expertise and knowledge to tell you in those places where it's worked, that's how it's done. That's how we recommend you to do. Let's work with you as a company. Let's bring experts to help you. But we cannot take decisions on tackling corruption directly. That's for Ghana to do it.
What about those who say that maybe you can use some of your projects, finance and support to take the lead in terms of, and these stringent measures could dovetail or roll over to other sectors in the economy?
We do. That's what I just told you. We have not the governance project. We have several governance projects in Ghana. There are 3 actually. I've been fighting to push it and make it happen. Some have been slow. I've even threatened to close them. Okay. There's been public governance, public service support projects. There's been other kind of PFM projects. Now we have a new one, and how can we use this to put systems to tackle this kind of governance issues? And we do, and in all of our projects, because governance is about sector governance. Energy, I use the example of energy. Yeah, it's one thing you can build all these lines, you can build all these interconnectors and these transformers, but is your energy policy around tariffs right? Is your energy policy around all your institutions that you have, do they have the right frameworks? Are the incentives right? the bonuses that these companies are getting when people are suffering. Are these right? These are things that you need to look at. And this, we can help you by telling you what's the best practice. And we can bring resources and expertise. But decisions are Ghanaians.
A little bit was telling me that you're bringing your service to an end in August this year. I stand to be corrected?
At this moment, that's what it's looking like, yeah.
How would you describe your service run in Ghana over these years?
Look, first to say that I consider myself blessed to have been working in Ghana because it's a great country. I have my own, I tell you, from Seychelles. We have history with Ghana, with King Prempeh being exiled there. Ghanaian people are my people today, you know, and we are one people. So in that regard, it's been a great, I mean, I've always been well received from the king to the president to the ministers to folks on the street. So it's great. But also, it's a country that works. Yes, we talked about a lot of challenges. It's a country that works. If you look at your infrastructure, your health system, your education system, your indicators are good, but it should be better. It can, not just can, it should be better for a country like you. So for me, yes, I've been lucky to have served in a great country. But at the same time, what can I say? There are missed opportunities, like I said. I have some.
And that will come to that. What are some of the things that you do? You have about 2 months, if I stand to be corrected, to end your service. What are some of the things, I mean, the top 2 things that you wished you could have worked hard to change before leaving this country?
One thing I wish that we could have helped Ghana not get where you are today on the economic crisis. I think together we could have, it could have been less worse than it is now. I don't blame myself or the bank because I know deep down we did everything every day, every night.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Some would see it interesting.
But sometimes, you know, decisions, I gave the example of the energy sector. I mean, there are things that have worked great. So I wish I could have left Ghana saying that, you know, I helped the country avoid a crisis. But I don't blame me or my institution, but I think we could have, you know, it would have been great. But, you know, like we all know, it's not all Ghana's, it's not Ghana's doing. The crisis was rampant. And, but I think we could have seized the opportunity that our team brought to avoid certain situations. I mean, 2 things on my dialogue with development partners. I think it's always been good. I mean, I want to put on record my appreciation for my colleague development partners. It's been great. We have a great head of missions. We had head of operations. In fact, most of the meetings are held here because of our room. I feel blessed to have had a great dialogue with the leadership. I felt always welcome wherever I go. I felt appreciated, and I have a great team. And I think, as we all say, I mean, I'm one person. Nobody's bigger than an institution. It's not about me.
Do you think that we have put in place some of the, you talked about this crisis and one of your missed opportunities. Do you think that we are putting in place, or we have put in place, those reforms, those structures that you can confidently tell yourself that maybe never again?
I think you've started. You've got a greater length already with the IMF program and the policies underpinning it. But like I said, I wouldn't say it's done. I come back to the structural reforms. Unless we bring in those reforms that are needed, you will have a good, sound economy in the short run. But in the long term, you'll continue to suffer from sectoral challenges. You talked about energy. You know, in the social sectors, it's not so bad. In like roads, I mean, you have good roads, but there's many things to be done. And I think, yeah, unless you have those aspects of governance strengthened, I don't think it will be enough just to say that you have an IMF program and everything will be okay in 5 years. You'll be a flying economy. You have a chance to, but there's a lot of work.
Do you think the political will is our biggest challenge? Some would say we have all the laws in Ghana and the reforms have been worked on. Having that political will to deal with corruption, to talk about, you talk about climate, the Galamsey issue, deforestation and all the rest. That is where the biggest challenge is.
I think you've showed that you have the political will. If you want to do it, the IMF supported program is one of them, because when President and his team felt that we had to do something, and I congratulate him and highly respect him for this, because it wasn't easy when Ghanaians were saying never again IMF. It took him a lot of courage and conviction to say, look, yes, we say we'll never go, but we are in a crisis. That's the only way to go. Really, all hats off to him for that. But as you said, this political will has to be extended across the board, beyond just the economy. The huge social challenges, there's huge governance challenges, there's issues around, accountability. So there's a lot of things. You're on the right track, but it's never enough to say we've done well. It's always how can we do better.
If you get back to Washington in September or whatever, what is the one thing that will be the founders moment you leave in Ghana with?
Staff, my team. Yeah, they've been great.
Final words for Ghanaians.
Look, final word is, it's a great country, as you've seen. You've done great, but there's the road ahead is long, and it's challenging. You have Ghanaians have all that it takes to be a great country. You are already a great country, but you have everything that you can. I mean, you have educated people, you have a very strong infrastructure base, you're a country that foreign investors are looking at Syria. You have everything. But having everything in your hands is not enough until you actually get it done, and ultimately that the people benefit from it. Without the people feeling down the line that they benefit and that the countries, they are living in a better place, all that we talk about, all that the politicians and the institutions talk about will not mean anything.
Mr. Laporte, I appreciate your time so much and wish you the best. And if you move on in August to see whatever that you be assigned, we hope to meet somewhere in the global or somewhere in Africa. Have a great day, Mr. Laporte. I appreciate your time so much.
It's been a pleasure having me, and I want to once again thank you for all those nice interviews we've had over time. And I really hope that I've been candid enough. I know there's always people will feel I could have been more frank, but like I said, there are ways of working together, and I really feel that the bank has done very well for Ghana. So thank you very much.
This is PM Express Business Edition. I know that debate will still go on in your homes and your offices in terms of what more can the World Bank do to support this economy. Have a great day.